Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Gao Wu. I went crazy with the animation system. Chapter 51. Li Hanfang glanced at the body lying on the ground and didn't pay much attention. He turned his attention to the watch strap on his left wrist. The information displayed on it had changed. Name: Li Hanfang. Score: 30. Seeing the displayed scores, Li Hanfang already had some guesses about the score conversion, but he didn't know whether the mid-level monsters had the same conversion rate. The third-level monster has 30 points, and the first and second levels correspond to 10 and 20 points. It cannot be judged above the fourth level. After all, low-level and mid-level are different. Li Hanfang began to think in his mind. According to this ratio, it is not difficult to get high scores, but the main problem is finding monsters. If you are not efficient enough in finding monsters, then no matter how strong you are, your score will not guarantee that you will be able to get first place. If someone finds a group of monsters, or finds a place where they can continue to score points, then the score will increase very quickly, and the variables are too great. Therefore, we must find ways to improve the efficiency of hunting monsters to ensure that our scores are in the first echelon. When he finally thought about it, Li Hanfang's eyes flashed, and after a while he took a deep breath. Phew, it seems that we can only use the old method. Although we may encounter some trouble, but... Without any hesitation, Li Hanfang walked towards the body of the Crackclaw bear lying on the ground with Tang Dao in his hand. At the same time, on a building ruins. A building that was severely damaged and seemed likely to collapse at any time was emitting a biting cold white mist from the inside out. A thick layer of ice quickly formed on the entire building from bottom to top, and spread to the entire building at a speed visible to the naked eye. A cold girl holding an ice crystal sword could be vaguely seen swaying and dancing in the building, flashing and moving among a group of black shadows, as if dancing. Another place on the endless grassland. A stern young man holding a spear was confronting a group of green wolves. At this time, the group of green wolves had formed an encirclement and started to move. However, the boy holding the gun still had a stern look on his face, standing with the gun in his hand, with faint blue and white arcs of electricity looming on his body. Ouch! As the Green Wolf King let out a wolf howl, the pack of wolves seemed to have received some signal and immediately formed an encirclement and ran towards the gun-wielding boy. Come on, see if you can cover my eyes. In a strange and steep valley. A giant python with a length of more than 10 meters and jade horns on its head was currently entrenched on its body. A pair of snake eyes stared at a young man in white holding a 3-foot sword in front of him. Hiss! The jade-horned python suddenly exerted force on its body and shot towards the young man like an arrow from its string, causing sand and gravel to scatter everywhere it passed. But the young man in white had a calm expression on his face, showing no fear at all, and the 3-foot sword in his hand was buzzing. I don't like struggling prey. At this time, Cao Yumeng was fighting crazily with a third-level split-claw bear. At this time, Cao Yumeng's body swelled, brown hair grew on his body, and the shadow of the armor-backed split-claw bear appeared behind him. A pair of sharp claws that are slightly longer than the claw bear constantly leave deep blood marks on the opponent's body, and sometimes use the thick iron armor on its back to resist the opponent's attacks. Although Cao Yumeng has a certain upper hand, the battle will obviously continue for a certain period of time. Madman, I told you I won't embarrass you. Almost at the same time, the new generation of geniuses in the Dragon Kingdom began to show their talents one after another. Some of the top talents and extremely strong combat power caused the teachers in various base cities watching outside the secret realm to exclaim in surprise. At this time, Li Hanfang was standing outside the cave. There were already a dozen corpses of monsters lying on the ground, but most of them were first level. Li Hanfang tidied up the battlefield and cut a knife on the artery of the corpse to increase the amount of bleeding. Then he glanced at the score displayed on the left wrist strap. Name: Li Hanfang. Score: 170. Li Hanfang raised his head and looked at the sky. Although the towering trees blocked most of his sight, he could still vaguely see that it was already noon. Li Hanfang suddenly frowned. He was a little confused. With such a strong smell of blood, why were so few monsters coming? And most of them are first level. Is it because it's not in depth enough? But even so, the number was too small. It was completely contrary to the dense population he thought. Moreover, there were third-level crack claw bears living here, so it shouldn't be the outermost area. Half a day has passed. If we follow this hunting speed, it is impossible to win first place. Li Hanfeng lowered his eyebrows and thought for a moment, then glanced around, judged the direction, and directly inserted the tang knife into one of the corpses, dragging the corpse deep into the forest, leaving a trail of blood wherever he passed. He had no choice but to go deeper now. Although he vaguely felt that something was wrong, he had enough confidence that he could leave calmly without the appearance of high-level monsters. In this way, Li Hanfeng went all the way deep. He killed all the monsters he encountered on the way, and then replaced them with a new body and continued dragging them deeper. In the conference room of No. 1 middle school outside the secret realm, all the teachers looked at each other in shock when they saw this scene. They didn't know how to evaluate it for a moment. They dragged the body directly into the depths of the forest. This was a very bold approach. Call him reckless, but he is very powerful. Let's call him arrogant. How do you know this is his full strength? At this time, Commissioner Wu spoke, with a slight chuckle in his voice, as if he was in for a good show. This classmate named Li Hanfeng will probably suffer a lot later. As soon as he said this, all the teachers looked at him sideways, including the two principals and the director. It was obvious that Commissioner Wu from the Education Bureau knew something about the situation. Oh, I wonder what Commissioner Wu means by this. Zhang Yuanfang asked directly. Commissioner Wu saw that everyone's eyes were on him, and after pondering for a while, he explained. This forest is a bit special. During the day, the activity of monsters will be very low. The higher the level, the more so. For example, the third-level split-claw bear found by Li Hanfeng may go out hunting for the entire day, and then it will stay in the cave until nightfall. If Li Hanfeng hadn't found its nest, even if it smelled food nearby, it wouldn't have chosen to go hunting. So even if Li Hanfeng uses such a strong smell of blood to attract monster beasts, the number of them will not be large after such a long time, and they are mostly first-order ones. However, as the sky gets darker and darker, the monster will become more and more active. He is still continuing to go deeper. I'm afraid it won't end well at night. At the end of the sentence, there was a faint smile on his face. He was looking forward to what Li Hanfeng would do when he discovered this problem. Judging from the fact that he can instantly kill a third-level split-claw bear with one move, this Li Hanfeng is at least a peak third-level transcendent, and he has also mastered the innate moves. He is an absolute good prospect. Commissioner Wu was thinking secretly, and already had the idea to win over Li Hanfeng. I see. Such an idea flashed through everyone's mind, because they were actually confused just now. Logically speaking, it was impossible for only 2 or 3 kittens to create such a strong smell of blood in the forest. Now Commissioner Wu's words helped answer their doubts. It turned out that there was something wrong with the forest itself, not the scarcity of monsters. In this case, wouldn't Li Hanfeng be in danger? At this time, a voice suddenly sounded, seeming a little anxious. This caused everyone to turn around and look at him. After seeing this person, everyone felt that it was normal for him to be worried. Because this person is the head teacher of Class 1, Guo Quan. At this time, Guo Quan's face was full of worry. After hearing what Commissioner Wu said, he was now very worried about Li Hanfeng's safety. At this time Li Xingwu spoke. He glanced at Guo Quan with a smile, and then said, Teacher Guo, don't worry too much. Everyone has to bear the consequences of their own choices. But this Li Hanfeng in your class is not an ordinary person. He will be fine. When Guo Quan heard Li Xingwu's words, the worry on his face eased slightly, and he nodded without saying anything. It was useless no matter how much he said now, and he could not pull Li Hanfeng out of the secret realm. Principal Ozan, however, did not speak during the whole process, and had no special reaction. He just kept looking at the projection light screen, his eyes constantly turning on a cold figure and Li Hanfeng. Li Hanfeng felt more and more that something was wrong with this forest. He had been dragging the monsters deep into the forest for 2 hours, and during this period there were still only a few first-order monsters blocking his way. Li Hanfeng stopped, threw the monster body aside, and thought quickly in his mind. It shouldn't be. There is definitely something wrong with this. The number of monsters is too small and too weak. This is unreasonable. But what's the problem? Li Hanfeng looked up and observed the sky again, and found that it was still some time before dark. He pondered for a while and decided to wait here, because he felt that it was inappropriate to go deeper, so he would wait until tonight. If it doesn't work, I can only go to the ruins tomorrow to check the situation. It's really difficult to guarantee my score here. Li Hanfeng looked around and found that this location was relatively open, which would increase the chance of monsters discovering him. Of course, he could also better observe the movements around him. Li Hanfeng was quite satisfied with this place. He began to wait for the monster to come over, and then made some noise, using the strong smell of blood to test what was going on here. After all, this place is much deeper than the previous place, so it should be better than before, right? Li Hanfeng was a little unsure, but there was no better way at the moment and he could only act according to the situation. Soon, Li Hanfeng encountered the first monster he was guarding here, which was a first-level wind fox. Still the first level, Li Hanfeng was confused, but his movements were not slow. He stepped forward and turned into lightning and rushed towards Gale Fox. With a flash of golden thunder, the first-level wind fox was dead on the spot. After Li Hanfeng made a cut on its artery, he jumped onto a branch to observe the surrounding situation. In this way, monster beasts came one after another looking for the smell of blood, causing the smell of blood here to become stronger and stronger. Moreover, there was a second-level monster during this period, which made Li Hanfeng's eyes light up. Sure enough, it will be different after you go deeper. Do you want to continue going deeper? Li Hanfeng thought for a while and decided to think about it tomorrow. It was already a bit late now and it would be dark soon, so it would be more cost-effective to hunt here for a few hours first. Soon, as the sky gradually darkened, the frequency, quantity and even quality of monster beasts appeared significantly increased. But Li Hanfeng didn't feel anything was wrong. He thought it was because he went deeper into the forest and the smell of blood was getting stronger. Li Hanfeng raised his head and glanced at the sky, which was already a little dark. Then he lowered his head and looked at the score displayed on the watch strap. Name: Li Hanfeng. Score: 360. It feels like it's almost done. Do you want to find a place to rest first? After all, it's still a little inconvenient to move around at night. Li Hanfeng lowered his head and began to think, but soon a beast's roar interrupted his thoughts. He looked up and saw a second-level blood-striped white tiger, and his eyes immediately lit up. Sure enough, it's right to go deeper. Li Hanfeng immediately jumped off the branch and rushed towards the blood-striped white tiger at great speed. The golden thunder of the Tang sword in his hand surged. Breath of Thunder 2 Type Rice Soul. He struck out 5 consecutive blows in an instant, and 5 horseshoe-shaped thunderbolts instantly covered the blood-striped white tiger. Phew! Several sounds of flesh cutting were heard in succession, and the limbs of the blood-striped white tiger were cut off instantly. A golden lightning flashed, and a huge tiger head was thrown into the air. Li Hanfeng had just put away the beast core when he discovered that several more monsters had appeared nearby and were surrounding him. A flash of confusion flashed across Li Hanfeng's face, but he didn't think much about it. He directly raised the Tang Dao and rushed towards several monsters. Breath of Thunder 4 Types Far Thunder. In an instant, Li Hanfeng's body erupted with rich thunder, and golden thunder shot out in all directions. As everyone knows, everyone outside the secret realm is already sweating for him at this time, and even Commissioner Wu has a solemn look on his face. Not to mention Guo Quan at this moment, he couldn't help but said in a trembling voice. Is there really no problem? It's going to be dark soon, and it won't be too late for rescue, right? Everyone was a little silent, so what if there was a question? This is the college entrance examination, so you can't forcefully interfere, right? The only thing to blame is that Li Hanfeng was too reckless. Well, everyone sighed inwardly. I am afraid that this Li Hanfeng at least had his martial arts test scores cancelled. At this time, the principal Ozan, who had never said a word before, spoke softly. Relax and watch carefully. Li Hanfeng in your class is very interesting. I'm actually looking forward to him being attacked so that I can see where his limits are. At the end of the sentence, there was a look of anticipation on his face. As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. They did not expect that their principal would actually comfort Guo Quan, and he was very optimistic about Li Hanfeng in his words. At this time, Li Hanfeng finally realized that something was wrong. Because as the sky gets darker and darker, There was originally insufficient light in the forest, and now it seems that the surrounding area is very dim, but monster beasts are starting to appear in groups. Several peak third-level monsters have appeared nearby, and there are even more from other levels. At this moment, no matter how stupid Li Hanfang was, he could see the problem. It turns out that the monsters here only become active at night, and only a small number of them come out during the day. Phew. Li Hanfang exhaled a long breath, and his body began to lean forward slowly, his center of gravity pressed down, the golden thunder on his body beat wildly, and the ground could not bear the pressure and began to crack. In that case, this year's top scorer in the martial arts exam. I'll accept it with a smile. Li Hanfang had no intention of evacuating, but chose to fight directly. He was promoted to the mid-level extraordinary and needed a hearty battle to measure his current strength. As soon as he stepped on his steps, his entire figure disappeared from the spot. Only a golden thunder light was seen in the field, rushing towards several third-level monsters. Kill the strongest one first. Breath of thunder, type of 1, flash of thunder, 8th company. Roar, roar. Several monster beasts roared and wanted to fight back, but there was no way, because Li Hanfang was too fast, and Li Hanfang himself was of a higher level than them. Aha, aha, aha. I saw the golden thunder light in the field flashing non-stop, extremely fast, although several monster beasts twisted their bodies vigorously, and even began to run rampant, trying to escape from Li Hanfang's attack range. But the harder he struggled, the more he received special attention. Ouch, puff. A third-level blood-striped white tiger wanted to escape from the battlefield. Its explosive power was very strong. It only needed a moment of acceleration to rush out of the battle circle. But as soon as it exerted its strength, a golden lightning flashed from the corner of its eye. Pass away. With a wisp of blood rising in the air, the left hind leg of the blood-striped white tiger has been completely severed. It couldn't help but scream. Ouch. Aha. Another golden thunder flashed, and Li Hanfang's target this time was its neck. With the sudden appearance of thunder, the Tang sword had already slashed towards the blood-striped white tiger's neck. At this moment, Li Hanfang felt a biting chill rising from the bottom of his heart, his eyes instantly turned scarlet, and a black magatama in his pupils was spinning crazily. Phew. Li Hanfang's figure stopped in place, his chest was penetrated by a sharp claw from the back, and he turned his head to look at the monster behind him expressionlessly. The 4th-level monster, the Nether Civet. At this time, the ghost civet could actually see a hint of mockery on its face. Then it pulled out the claw that had penetrated Li Hanfang's chest, stretched out its barbed tongue and licked the blood on it. As soon as its tongue touched the paw, the mocking expression on its face instantly solidified, because it discovered that there was no smell of blood at all. It looked at Li Hanfang with a pair of dark cat eyes. I found that Li Hanfang was looking at it expressionlessly, with a pair of scarlet pupils as if he were looking at a dead object. Bang! Li Hanfang's figure suddenly turned into white smoke and disappeared, leaving only a section of tree broken by the monster. Are you laughing at me? An icy cold voice sounded from behind the Nether Civet cat, shocking it into a shadow and disappearing into the darkness. But it seemed that it was a step too late. A Tang knife had already cut through its body before, bringing with it a line of blood. Meow. A flash of surprise flashed across Li Hanfang's scarlet pupils. What a quick reaction and speed. He knew that the attack he just made didn't really hurt the opponent. The real force of Tang's sword did not fall on the opponent, but the moment the blade came into contact with the Nether Civet cat's skin, its body twisted strangely, and the skin was only scratched by the blade. It was too late, but it was so fast. From the time Li Hanfang realized that the Nether Civet wanted to sneak attack, to the time when Li Hanfang used the substitute technique to counterattack the Nether Civet, it was only a breathless time. Li Hanfang quickly glanced around. In front of the Sharingan, which can see through the flow of spiritual energy, unless you hide behind a cover, you will be discovered. There is no use hiding in the dark. But soon, Li Hanfang's expression became serious. There are more and more monsters around. In addition to the few third-level monsters that were not killed just now, 3 more appear now, and there are as many as 20 or 30 other low-level monsters. It's just that the low-level monsters don't seem to dare to get too close and have been wandering outside the battle circle, but their numbers are increasing. It seems that they are jealous of the corpses on the ground and want a piece of the pie, but they are also afraid that other high-level monsters will attack them. And he discovered that in addition to the ghost civet, there was also a 4th-level monster nearby, which flashed past his sight and hid in the surrounding trees and gravel. His sight was blocked and he couldn't see clearly what it was, but the concentration of spiritual power was definitely at the 4th level. Now Li Hanfang was in a dilemma. He didn't expect that not long after the sky darkened, more than one 4th-level monster appeared nearby. The situation would be very unfavorable for him if he continued to fight like this. It seems like it's too deep. Phew. Li Hanfang exhaled heavily. He was a little unwilling to let him evacuate now. He had just warmed up, and the ghost civet had made him feel the approach of death just now. This feeling is so rare. In order to repay the other party, Li Hanfang decided to send it into reincarnation. A flash of malevolence flashed through his scarlet eyes, and his body slowly leaned forward. The white mist exhaled from the corner of his mouth became thicker, and the golden thunder on his body beat more and more violently. Hiss. Li Hanfang let out a hissing breath from the corner of his mouth, and a pair of scarlet riding wheels turned crazily, trying to determine the location of the nether civet, even if it was only for a moment. Come on, kitty. At this time, the nearby 3rd-level monsters began to surround Li Hanfang, especially some with knife marks on their bodies, and they roared loudly. Roar, roar, ouch. Seeing Li Hanfang's lack of movement, several monster beasts couldn't hold it any longer and rushed toward him one after another. However, Li Hanfang ignored them because they were too slow in front of the Sharingan. Li Hanfang was still scanning the surroundings, his scarlet pupils passing over the trees and boulders, waiting for that moment of opportunity. Boom! Several 3rd-level monsters had already rushed in front of Li Hanfang, and their cold claws and sharp teeth had already attacked Li Hanfang, but he still didn't move. Just when the attack was about to fall on Li Hanfang, his scarlet pupils suddenly shrank. Got you. The breathing rhythm suddenly changed. Breath of thunder 4 types far thunder. Boom. Sizzle. Golden thunder struck Li Hanfang and directly hit several level 3 monsters, causing their bodies to stiffen suddenly and then fly backwards. Then Li Hanfang's breathing changed again, and the ground under his feet cracked instantly, with gravel flying. Breath of thunder type of 1 thunderbolt flash super speed. Boom. Li Hanfang's figure disappeared from the spot instantly, and a golden lightning flashed through the darkness. Not far away, the nether civet, which had just silently slipped out from behind the trees and wanted to change its position to approach Li Hanfang, suddenly had its hair standing on end, and a feeling of extreme danger arose from the bottom of its heart. Meow. It let out a ferocious cry, its dark cat eyes full of ferocity. Even though it reacted very quickly, it only had time to raise its front paws to block its neck. Ding. Poof. The blade collided with the sharp claws, and the terrifying speed brought about a strong impact. The ghost civet was instantly chopped away, and a pair of sharp claws were directly shaken away. However, Li Hanfang's speed did not slow down much. The blade kept up with him, and his scarlet pupils stared at the nether civet cat's neck. The moment the nether civet flew backwards, the blade covered with golden lightning was already following its neck, and the distance was getting closer and closer. Poof. The blade scratched the skin and cut into the flesh. The nether civet cat's neck was firmly pressed against the blade, and blood had already spilled out. However, both sides were moving at high speed, and the nether civet cat suffered a huge impact. At this time, it could not control its body at all, and could only let its body fly backwards, and its claws were numb. If you can't resist at all, your neck will be chopped off sooner or later. Li Hanfang watched with an indifferent expression as Tang Dao sliced open the opponent's neck bit by bit. The veins on his arms swelled, and the blade penetrated deeper and deeper into the flesh. Meow. The ghost civet seemed to have regained some control over its body, and actually twisted in the air, trying to avoid the blade that was about to cut off its neck. However, just this moment caused its original flying speed to slow down. Phew. The head of the nether civet was thrown straight away, arced in the air, and then landed on the ground not far away. Boom, boom, boom. Ta-ta. Li Hanfang's figure also fell to the ground, and his pair of scarlet Sharingan eyes looked indifferently at the head of the nether civet on the ground. The fingers of his left hand danced very covertly. Wei Hai Cho Shu Yin. At this moment, a black shadow appeared silently behind Li Hanfang, and its sharp claws emitting icy cold light went straight to Li Hanfang's back. This scene seems a little familiar. Li Hanfang seemed not to notice, still staring at the head of the nether civet on the ground, unaware of how dangerous he was at this moment. Phew! The sound of a sharp weapon penetrating flesh and blood sounded. Li Hanfeng lowered his head and looked at the sharp claws that penetrated his chest. Then he turned his head expressionlessly and saw the black shadow behind him clearly. By the way, you cats like to play this trick so much. A slightly joking voice sounded from behind the black shadow. The shadow leopard was startled, and turned to look at Li Hanfeng, who had appeared behind him at some point. Then he looked at his paws. Who could be seen piercing through his paws at this moment? It's just a piece of rotten wood. The shadow leopard was shocked. Before he had time to react, a huge fireball had already hit him from behind, and the firelight completely illuminated its figure. Its speed and reactions are extremely fast, which are natural advantages in feline genes. As soon as the firelight illuminated its figure, it flashed its limbs and disappeared within the scope of the firelight. Then, before it could stabilize its body, a tang sword with thunderous light was already slashing towards it, cutting straight into its relatively soft abdomen. The shadow leopard's reaction was extremely sensitive. The moment his limbs landed on the ground, his body twisted strangely to the left. While avoiding the blade, a thick tail whipped towards Li Hanfeng with a burst of sound. Call out. The speed was so fast that Li Hanfeng could only stop his attack and block it with a knife in both hands. Boom! The huge force knocked Li Hanfeng back a few steps, and the shadow leopard took this opportunity to dodge and try to escape from the battlefield. Li Hanfeng naturally didn't want to give it this chance, but just as he was about to pursue it, the surrounding third-level monsters had already attacked. I saw a huge pangolin crashing directly towards Li Hanfeng, and the ground shook with rumbling sounds as it stepped forward. Feeling the attack, Li Hanfeng's golden lightning surged, his breathing rhythm changed, and white mist surged around his mouth. Breath of Thunder 2-type Rice Soul. In an instant, 5 lightning blades shaped like horseshoes struck the pangolin, making a clanging sound of metal. Both Li Hanfeng and the other party were shaken away by a counterattack force. So hard. Li Hanfeng was a little surprised, but he quickly saw clearly that it was actually an armored beast, so that was normal. The armored beast's whole body is covered with a thick iron frame, and it is almost fully armed, except its abdomen. Li Hanfeng's scarlet eyes were full of ferocity. At this time, there were several more third-level monsters around him. Nearly 10 of them were already surrounding him, including many at the peak of third level. There is also a 4th-level shadow leopard staring at him secretly. Moreover, if you stay here, there will only be more and more monsters, and if you continue to struggle for a while, there will even be no shortage of 4th-level monsters. Li Hanfeng raised his head and glanced at the sky. It was completely dark at this time, not because there was insufficient light in the forest. The situation seems a little unfriendly to him. Just when Li Hanfeng was thinking about exposing some of his trump cards and making a big move. As everyone knows, the conference room outside the secret realm has already exploded. What's going on? What's the ability of that person who suddenly turned into wood? Isn't he an enhancement type? That's right, what about the abilities of lightning and fire? At first, they thought it was Li Hanfeng's innate skill that produced a visual effect that resembled thunder and lightning. After all, they only saw an extremely fast knife, like a flash of lightning. Until Li Hanfeng used the 4th type, Far Thunder, they were sure that Li Hanfeng did have the ability of thunder, which shocked them to death. It can't be twin talents, or even higher. Hiss. As soon as these words came out, everyone gasped. If this is really the case, it would be too scary, but at the same time, they were also confused for a while. On the awakening day, it was obviously the S-level enhancement system that had been awakened. How come he has become a twin or even a triple gifted person now? What happened? The eyes of all the teachers fell on the strongest and most experienced people in the field. Principal Ozan just stared at Li Hanfeng in the light screen with interest, without any reaction to the gazes of these teachers. Instead, Commissioner Wu pondered for a while and then said, "If I guessed correctly, it should be the second awakening." After hearing this, everyone fell into a brief silence and looked at each other, obviously not understanding the concept of the second awakening. In addition to the talents that were awakened on the awakening day, some people may awaken their talents for a second time under certain specific unrepeatable circumstances, receive strong stimulation, or are in extreme danger. This is documented, but it is very rare. As soon as these words came out, everyone suddenly showed a hint of surprise. If so, that would make sense. But is it really so? No one cares, everyone is just looking for a reason that they can believe and that is logical to explain this unreasonable scene. But Guo Quan's attention is not on this. Although he also cares about it, he is more concerned about Li Hanfeng's safety than this. He doesn't seem to have any intention of escaping. What should I do? He doesn't seem to notice anything is wrong in the forest. This is too dangerous. Why don't we send out rescue first? This way we can appear in time when he calls for help. As soon as these words came out, everyone became quiet and looked at Li Xingwu and the others. Only here could they make this decision. Li Xingwu and Zhang Yuanfang looked at each other, and after thinking for a moment, they both glanced at Ozan. Seeing that the other party didn't respond, they both looked at Commissioner Wu at the same time. Commissioner Wu immediately understood what the two meant, nodded, and did not object. After all, he was very optimistic about Li Hanfeng and did not want anything to happen to him. He immediately started operating the smart watch strap on his left hand, but the style of his watch strap was obviously different from the one worn by the candidates. Li Hanfeng glanced at the crowd of monsters that were slowly surrounding them, as well as the first-order monsters that were about to move around the perimeter of the battle circle, and the ferocity in his eyes gradually became stronger. In that case, let's give it a try. He decided to make a killing, even if he showed a little bit of his trump cards, it didn't matter. Li Hanfeng's figure instantly rushed into the herd of beasts, veins popped up on his arms, white mist rose from his mouth, and his breathing rhythm suddenly changed. Breath of thunder, 3 types gathering mosquitoes into thunder. Suddenly, golden thunder and lightning ripples gathered, and accompanied by a mosquito-like buzzing sound, the thunder and lightning ripples struck at the monsters in all directions. In an instant, the surrounding monsters were pushed back, while leaving wounds and splashes of blood. Taking advantage of the opportunity for the monster to retreat temporarily, Li Hanfeng turned his wrist, changed his breathing again, and moved towards the monster closest to him. Breath of thunder, 2 type rice soul. In the blink of an eye, he slashed out 5 lightning blades that were shaped like horseshoes, and then sealed the 3rd level, 3-eyed demon hungry ape. The 3-eyed demon hungry ape had just been forced back by the thunder and lightning ripples, and there was still a bloody mark on his chest. At this moment, he had not yet gained a firm footing, and the golden sword light had already covered it. Puff puff puff. The 3-eyed demon hungry ape instantly had 5 ferocious blades on its body, one of which cut off most of its neck, causing its head to droop on the spot. First, Li Hanfeng's scarlet pupils condensed. The surrounding monsters had already taken advantage of Li Hanfeng to deal with the 3-eyed demon hungry ape, and gathered around him again. The sound of roars and sharp claws cutting the air rang in his ears. He could even smell the fishy smell coming from the monster's mouth. Li Hanfeng frowned slightly, his breathing changed again, and a rich golden lightning suddenly surged from his body and shot out in all directions. Breath of thunder, 4 types far thunder. Boom sizzling. Li Hanfeng once again took advantage of the monster's retreat to dodge, stepped on it, and disappeared from the spot. As soon as his figure disappeared, the shadow leopard appeared on the spot, staring at Li Hanfeng's back with a pair of beast eyes. While Li Hanfeng was avoiding the shadow leopard's attack, he had already arrived in front of a 3rd-level armored rhinoceros. At this moment, the armored rhinoceros had just taken a few steps back, and before it could stand still, Li Hanfeng had already jumped up, and the Tang Dao in his hand slashed hard at its neck. Poof! Now Li Hanfeng's strength was no longer the same. This knife directly cut off its carotid artery. Li Hanfeng did not hesitate and dropped the Tang Dao in his hand again. Roar! Phew! The armored rhinoceros only had time to let out a scream, and the blade had already passed its neck again. The second. At the same time, the Tang Dao in Li Hanfeng's hand was instantly placed in front of him, and a pair of scarlet Sharingan eyes were spinning crazily. Boom! A huge force came from Tang Dao, and Li Hanfeng's figure was instantly knocked backwards. The shadow leopard's attack failed, so he seized the opportunity and instantly turned into a black shadow and ran towards Li Hanfeng. Although Li Hanfeng did not stabilize his figure, his scarlet eyes were fixed on the figure of the shadow leopard charging towards him at great speed. That ghostly speed was clearly visible in Li Hanfeng's eyes, as if a slow-down button had been pressed. The shadow leopard chased in front of Li Hanfeng in an instant, and its sharp claws struck Li Hanfeng hard on the head, while Li Hanfeng's Tang Dao seemed to be waiting somewhere in advance, directly blocking its attack route. Ding! There was a harsh sound of metal collision, and Li Hanfeng's body, which was still flying backwards, changed direction at a very fast speed in the air and flew in another direction. Li Hanfeng, who had no focus, could only block the attack, but could not block the impact. But he didn't panic at all, he still looked indifferent. His eyes never moved away from the shadow leopard. Whoosh! The shadow leopard caught up with Li Hanfeng again, slashed the air with its sharp claws, and struck Li Hanfeng on the head again. And its movements have been seen by Li Hanfeng. Li Hanfeng's scarlet eyes flashed with a ferocious look, and he forcibly controlled his body to lean over, making his body slightly lower. The shadow leopard's reaction was also extremely fast, its claws changed direction and still shot towards Li Hanfeng's head. It's just that the direction of attack has changed from the original horizontal direction to top-down. Li Hanfeng had already set up the Tang Dao first and held it above his head. Boom! As expected, Li Hanfeng was shot away again, but this time he flew to the ground. Boom! With a muffled sound, Li Hanfeng hit the ground hard, setting off a burst of smoke and dust. Compared with the previous 2 times, this time he was hit hard, and all the bones in his body felt like they were falling apart. Although a deep hole was created in the ground, it finally landed. Li Hanfeng endured the pain in his body, quickly climbed out of the pit, adjusted his breathing slightly, and then quickly moved aside. Aha! The sound of sharp claws cutting through the air sounded, and Li Hanfeng felt that several hair strands on the back of his head had been cut off, and the hairs on his body suddenly stood on end. However, the scarlet eyes were still cold, and he turned his head instantly to look, but the shadow leopard was no longer behind him. Oops! Li Hanfeng's pupils suddenly shrank. Phew! Almost at the moment Li Hanfeng turned his head, the sharp claw penetrated his chest. He looked down at the sharp claw that passed through his chest, his scarlet eyes filled with disbelief. In just an instant, a strange smile appeared on his face, and then he tightly hugged the opponent's claws with both hands. At the same time, outside the conference room of No. 1 middle school. The scene in front of them shocked everyone. They were all in disbelief, and their pupils were shaking. Could it be that this genius, who might have been awakened for the 2nd time, died like this? The situation developed so fast that no one could react for a while. How is it possible? Just die like this? At this time, Guo Quan was a little distracted looking at the picture on the projection light screen, and murmured. When several teachers around Guo Quan saw his expression, they all stepped forward and patted him on the shoulder to express their condolences. Although it was hard for Li Xingwu and others to believe that Li Hanfeng died so easily, the facts were before their eyes and they couldn't help but not believe it. Alas, several people sighed, and their faces looked a little ugly. Only Liu Zhan looked confused, but the next moment his eyes suddenly lit up. Look, what is that? A teacher pointed at the projection light screen and said in a somewhat urgent voice. After hearing this, everyone turned to look at the light curtain. I saw a huge fireball roaring towards Shadow Leopard and Li Hanfeng. Art Fire Escape Ho Fireball. The Shadow Leopard immediately noticed it and wanted to dodge, but found that its paws were tightly held by Li Hanfeng. Roar! After only a moment's delay, the fireball instantly submerged a person and an animal in it. Boom! The huge impact shattered the ground, and the high temperature instantly ignited the Shadow Leopard's hair. The moment Li Hanfeng's figure was hit by the flames, he turned into a white smoke and disappeared with a bang. Ho ho! The Shadow Leopard let out a painful cry, and its body, which was pressed to the ground by the impact of the fireball, struggled wildly. After getting up, it quickly rushed out of the coverage of the flames. The Shadow Leopard, who was already covered in burns and was probably half-cooked, met a pair of scarlet pupils as soon as he rushed out of the flames. Feeling the evil power in these eyes, Shadow Leopard actually lost consciousness for a moment. Then it immediately woke up, but saw a golden lightning flash from the corner of its eye, and then its vision began to spin. Li Hanfeng's figure appeared behind the Shadow Leopard, flicking the blood on the Tang sword. His scarlet Sharingan scanned the surrounding monsters that were about to move, and whispered softly. The third. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Gao Wu. I went crazy with the animation system. Chapter 56. At this time, everyone in the conference room looked blankly at the young man in black in the light curtain. They couldn't figure out what was going on. How could there be two Li Hanfang? Is it another new ability? No way. How much ability does he still have? They had many questions that could not be answered, so they all turned their attention to Li Xingwu and others, hoping that they could see some clues and help them solve their doubts. As everyone knows, Li Xingwu and others are also a little confused at this moment. Li Xingwu and Zhang Yuanfang looked at each other, and then looked at Commissioner Wu together. The three of them looked at each other for a moment, and finally looked at Ozan together. At this time, Ozan's eyes were shining, as if he had discovered a new world. He stared at Li Hanfang in the light curtain for a moment, and murmured unconsciously. Interesting, so interesting. He has such a strong sense of fighting at such a young age. Seeing Ozan's appearance, Li Xingwu tentatively asked, Principal, do you see any clues? When Ozan heard the question, he closed his eyes and then turned to look at everyone with a smile. Judging from his expression, he knew he was in a good mood now. Not bad, really good, you are all very good. You can actually cultivate such a genius. It seems that you have been very serious about your work during my absence. Everyone laughed when they heard Ozan's praise, but no one said anything. Just kidding, they didn't even know that Li Hanfang had such strength. They only knew that he was an S-level genius, and they didn't dare to take credit for his training. Even Guo Quan had a sarcastic expression on his face. Li Hanfang had asked for leave since he woke up. During this period, he only knew that the other party went to the Misty Forest and knew nothing else. How could he talk about cultivating him? Seeing that no one spoke, Ozan didn't care. Instead, after pondering for a moment, he began to explain. Do you still remember when this kid was shot to the ground by the shadow leopard? Everyone nodded when they heard this. Of course they remembered this. It was a big hole at that time. If my guess is correct, he was no longer in his original form when he climbed out of the pit. He took advantage of the moment when the pit and the smoke disappeared from the shadow leopard's sight, and made a clone to crawl out of the pit to attract the shadow leopard's attention, but his true body did not come out of the pit. As for his method of making clones, I don't know very well, but I think it should be similar to his previous ability to replace wood. After saying this, he turned to look at Li Hanfang in the light screen and said nothing else. He was very interested in this kid now. When everyone heard this, their faces showed a look of surprise, so that's it. At the same time, I was also shocked. As the principal said, he really has a strong sense of fighting. From the moment he twisted his body and caused the shadow leopard to shoot him into the ground, he had planned everything, and the development of things did go according to the script he wrote. This Li Hanfang is a second awakened person himself, and his talent level seems to be quite high. Not only can he break through to the mid-level transcendence before the college entrance examination, but he also has such fighting talent. He is truly a new generation of evildoer. Li Xingwu and the three of them looked at each other, and they all saw the shock in each other's pupils. But the situation on Li Hanfang's side is not very good at the moment. He is running away like crazy now. He had no choice but to escape. He had just killed the shadow leopard, and found that there were several more peak 3rd level monsters around him, as well as 2 4th level monsters. If he continues to fight, there will only be more and more monsters, and his body and aura, which are not at their peak, will only become weaker and weaker. So it's not enough, so we can only withdraw first. Li Hanfang was not familiar with the forest here at all. He could only roughly identify the way he came from, and then retreated there. At least this way he could ensure that he would not go deeper and deeper. And escaping is not easy. Fortunately, Li Hanfang has this experience and often does this in the Misty Forest. Although a group of 1st and 2nd level monsters were guarding the outside of the battle circle, Li Hanfang directly used his Type 1 Divine Speed, and instantly swept out of the encirclement. At the same time, he distanced himself from 2 4th order monster beasts and a group of 3rd order monster beasts. However, the forest in the dark night was too scary, and the monsters along the way were too dense. From time to time, one would jump out and block Li Hanfang's path. As a result, Li Hanfang was chased by 2 4th level monsters several times. After a brief confrontation, he was harassed by a group of 3rd order monsters and suffered several wounds on his body. Finally, after running away for more than 2 hours, probably because they had escaped to the outskirts of the forest, the two fourth-level monsters were no longer chasing him, and the other monsters naturally couldn't keep up with Li Hanfang's speed. But Li Hanfang soon encountered another problem. The monsters here were too dense at night, and he was injured, so from time to time he would encounter several monsters looking for him based on the smell of blood. And he was unfamiliar with this place and didn't know where to hide. As a result, he wandered around aimlessly for more than an hour, and by this time he was completely exhausted. The wounds on the body have been bandaged for more than an hour, which at least ensures that there will not be a strong smell of blood. But he didn't know where to rest, so he could only climb up a big tree and use bandages to wrap a simple hammock among the branches. At this time, Li Hanfang was lying on it recovering his spiritual energy. After more than an hour, he felt that the spiritual energy in his body had almost recovered, and the pain and fatigue in his body had eased a lot, and then he slowly opened his eyes. Call. Li Hanfang let out a heavy breath, raised his left hand and looked at his current score. Name: Li Hanfang. Score: 680. There was a trace of doubt on Li Hanfang's face. After thinking for a moment, he came to his senses and put on a smile. I see, the fourth-level monster is worth 100 points. It seems that no matter in the past or this time, only a very small number of people can reach the fourth level at this time. It seems that the top 10 on the freshman list are all fourth-level geniuses, but how should the top 10 be ranked? Does it just depend on this score? If so, then luck is very important. Li Hanfang was a little confused. At this time, those who could reach the fourth level of transcendence were not mediocre. Their talent level was at least S level or above. If you only rely on scores to rank the top 10 in the freshman rankings, then it will be crucial to find so many monsters or aliens. In this case, luck is more important than strength for the top 10 rankings. Li Hanfang thought secretly, but soon a trace of determination flashed in his eyes. No matter what the method is, I want this first place. Early the next morning, a ray of sunlight shined on Li Hanfang's face through the dense leaves. Slowly opening his eyes, Li Hanfang stood up, looked up at the sky and then glanced around. After confirming that there were no monsters sneaking up nearby, Li Hanfang relaxed his tense nerves a little. Being alone in a place like this, one has to be vigilant at all times while sleeping. Because you don't know when a monster will discover you, you can't enter deep sleep at all, and you need to maintain awareness of the outside world at all times. Phew. Li Hanfang took a deep breath, and then checked the wounds on his body. There were 2 wounds on his chest and left forearm. One night passed, and because the wound was not very deep, it was almost scabbed. He began to treat the wound again and wrapped it with gauze. Then Li Hanfang jumped off the branch, moved his somewhat stiff body, and began to think about today's actions. Although the injury has not fully recovered, an injury of this degree will not affect combat effectiveness. Should we hunt monsters the same way we did yesterday? But the harvest in the forest during the day is probably very limited. Li Hanfang lowered his eyebrows and thought for a moment, then raised his eyebrows. Would you like to go take a look at the ruins? Thinking of this, Li Hanfang immediately made a decision. He would not gain much here during the day, but there might be unexpected gains over there in the ruins. For example, aliens. After all, there are alien races here that have been deliberately ranched, and these alien races are obviously not in this forest. Otherwise, there would have been such a big movement last night without the alien races discovering it, so it can only be in other places. Even if there is nothing gained in the ruins, as long as you come back here at night, kill a wave and then retreat, the harvest will not be much different from yesterday. He did what he thought of. Li Hanfang identified the direction and immediately walked out of the forest. This was already the outskirts of the forest, and it wouldn't take long for him to leave the forest. After walking a few steps, Li Hanfang suddenly stopped and thought of something. Because he was too tired to retreat last night, he didn't have time to check the kill points. Immediately, with a thought, the system panel appeared in his sight, and Li Hanfang glanced at the lower right corner. Kill value: 320. Seeing this number, Li Hanfang quickly calculated in his mind. After a moment, a look of surprise appeared on his face. I see, the ratio of killing points obtained after being promoted to the intermediate level has changed. According to Li Hanfang's estimation, a monster of the same level now has 50 points, while all low-level monsters have reduced to 10 points. Li Hanfang had doubts before. If the killing value was 10 at the same level, how many monsters would have to be killed if he wanted to gain the ability to have 1,000,000 killing values? Especially after your level increases, where will there be so many high-level monsters for you to kill? At first, Li Hanfang placed his trust in system tasks, but it turned out that these tasks may only be released when encountering special events, and are not a regular source of kill points at all. Now he understands that as the level increases by 1 level, the corresponding kill value will also increase by 1 level. In other words, when Li Hanfang reaches a high level, this acquisition ratio will increase. It seems that the system will maintain a balance in acquiring abilities, ensuring that at each level of strength, when acquiring the abilities you want, the difficulty will not be ridiculously high. This is easy to understand. If Li Hanfang breaks through the high level and kills a person of the same level with a killing value of 10 points, then if he wants to change to a pair of Mangekyo Sharingan, the difficulty will be outrageous. And if you can get 100 killing points by killing someone of the same level at a low level, then it will be very simple for him to obtain various low-level abilities. Therefore, the system will maintain a balance of difficulty in obtaining abilities. When your strength increases, you will naturally not want those low-level abilities, but want to exchange for high-level abilities. Although the difficulty is still relatively high, it would be outrageous. After thinking about this, Li Hanfang curled up his lips. In this case, he would probably be able to perfect his ability system at the intermediate extraordinary stage. When the time comes, killing people of the same rank is like chopping melons and vegetables, no problem. Li Hanfang was in a good mood, but he didn't dare to relax for the exams that would take place in the next 2 days. After all, the reward from this mission was too important to him. After thinking about this, he immediately quickened his pace, paying attention to whether there were any monsters nearby, and if there were any, he would deal with them casually. Because he was on the periphery, although Li Hanfang paid attention to whether there were monsters along the way and did not rush on purpose, it only took him 2 hours to reach the ruins. Li Hanfang looked at the endless expanse of building ruins in front of him, feeling like a city that had been baptized by missiles. Without thinking much, I walked into it and walked on the ruined streets of this city. The roads were covered with thick dust and construction debris. The grass on the roadside was covered with weeds. The rows of buildings looked like broken bones. Exposed. Although the sun shines on this ruins, it still gives people a depressing feeling. Li Hanfang opened his Sharingan and scanned the surroundings, hoping to find some traces of living creatures. At the same time, his body tensed up in case something suddenly jumped out. Li Hanfang walked for a long time and finally discovered a huge skeleton lying next to the dilapidated building not far in front of him. It looked like the skeleton of a monster. He quickly walked forward to check it out and found that it was the skeleton of an armored rhinoceros. He was not a professional, so he could not accurately judge the time of death. But it looks like he definitely won't die in the near future, at least within a few weeks. Moreover, there is no trace of residual flesh and blood on it, but the traces left by some sharp utensils are vaguely visible. It looks like it was eaten by something, but what kind of creature can actually eat the flesh and blood so cleanly? Li Hanfang was a little confused. He had little experience in this area and could not tell what kind of creature left the traces. However, the bite marks left on the skeleton were not big and a little strange. It shouldn't be left by a large monster, and monsters wouldn't eat their prey so cleanly. Usually only scavenging creatures would eat the corpse so cleanly, but Li Hanfang couldn't tell what it was. I glanced around the skeleton and didn't find anything similar to footprints on the ground. It seemed like it had been covered with dust for too long. Li Hanfang stood up and looked around. Suddenly his eyes stopped on a dilapidated building near the skeleton. From his position, he could see the inside of the skeleton-like building, and he found an unusual place. There is actually a cave in the ground floor of this dilapidated building. This was the first time Li Hanfang discovered something unusual after entering the ruins. He walked slowly into the building and came to the cave to examine it carefully. The diameter of this underground hole is about 1.5 meters. There is accumulation of soil near the entrance of the hole. It is obviously a hole dug by some creature. However, Li Hanfang found no traces of biological activity near the entrance of the cave. Instead, there was thick dust around it. Strange, could it be an abandoned cave? Li Hanfang looked inside the cave. It was dark inside and he couldn't see clearly. Naturally, he didn't know the depth. He thought for a while, picked up a nearby piece of gravel and threw it in. The stone made a falling sound soon after being thrown in, and then there was a rolling sound. Li Hanfeng's eyes lit up. This was not a vertical hole, but a horizontal hole. I see, this should be an underground passage, but this entrance has obviously not had any biological activity for a long time. Given the size of this hole, this creature wouldn't be too big. Is it a rat-like monster? Or something else? It shouldn't be a rat-like monster. It doesn't match the traces left on the skeleton. Those are not rat-like traces. Li Hanfeng frowned. He couldn't get down from the cave entrance at all. Could he just leave like this? After thinking for a moment, Li Hanfeng suddenly started to form seals with his hands. Si Wei Shen Hai Wu Yin. Art Fire Escape Ho Fireball. Boom. The fireballs poured in directly from the entrance of the hole. Li Hanfeng's spiritual energy surged and he maintained the output of the fireballs for nearly 2 minutes before stopping. Looking closely, the land near the entrance of the cave has turned red and cracked, with cracks extending outward. Li Hanfeng waited there for about 5 minutes, but there was still no movement. He was a little disappointed. It seems like this place has really been abandoned. After murmuring, he turned and walked outside. However, as soon as he walked out of the building, he felt a slight vibration under his feet. Li Hanfeng stood on the dilapidated street and kept looking around, trying to identify which direction the movement was coming from. As the vibrations became stronger and stronger, Li Hanfeng suddenly turned his head and looked at the hole in the dilapidated building. There was an obvious vibration at the entrance of the cave, and the soil on the edge that had been burned by the fireball began to collapse. Li Hanfeng's pupils shrank. This number was probably quite a lot. He immediately dodged to the side, hiding his figure among the ruins, and stared at the hole with a pair of scarlet Sharingan eyes. Boom! Red shadows, the size of washbasins rushed out of the hole, and then spread out in all directions, looking for something nearby. There were hundreds of them at least. After Li Hanfeng saw this thing clearly, his face became extremely solemn. This is a creature with a triangular head, a pair of tentacles on its head, a pair of wings retracted within the body on its chest, an oval abdomen, and a mouth that is like an iron pincer emitting cold light. Bloodthirsty ant colony. Just by seeing this mouthpart, Li Hanfeng knew who was the culprit who ate the armored rhinoceros. As we all know, ants are omnivorous insects, but this bloodthirsty ant only eats flesh and blood, and is extremely bloodthirsty. Moreover, the ants reproduce very quickly and their numbers are extremely large. This is probably only a small part, and more of them are probably not near this cave. Li Hanfeng watched as the originally dark bodies of these bloodthirsty ants turned a little red, probably because they were roasted red by the residual high temperature in the cave when they came out. At this time, no more bloodthirsty ants came out of the cave entrance. The last one that came out was obviously much larger than the other bloodthirsty ants. This is a third-level bloodthirsty ant, probably the leader, and the others are first-level worker ants. Li Hanfeng looked at the densely packed numbers, but his eyes lit up slightly on his solemn face. If this quantity is all done, this score, what should I do? I just thought it would be quite choking, and there is no guarantee that they will call ants. It will be a bit troublesome. It was a mistake. I should have known that fire would have erupted at the entrance of the cave just now. Li Hanfeng was a little annoyed. If they were to block the entrance of the cave and be exposed to the powerful fireball, these first-order bloodthirsty ants would die as many as they came. This is a bit difficult to do now. Just when Li Hanfeng was still thinking about how to kill the group of bloodthirsty ants, the tentacles of the leader of the bloodthirsty ants twitched slightly, as if releasing some signal. Suddenly, all the bloodthirsty ants began to surge in the direction of Li Hanfeng. They moved very quickly, forming an encirclement in an instant, and it was an all-round encirclement because they could fly. Seeing this scene, Li Hanfeng's scarlet eyes narrowed slightly, revealing a dangerous light. This is forcing me to be tough. Li Hanfeng also didn't expect that the bloodthirsty ant leader's senses were so sensitive. He was discovered without making any move, so now he only had one choice. Fight first and then talk. Li Hanfeng's eyes narrowed and he locked onto the leader. His breathing rhythm changed, and the golden thunder light on his body surged. Breath of thunder type of 1 thunderbolt. Halfway through the skill, Li Hanfeng suddenly stiffened and his face became ugly. because he found that the bloodthirsty ant leader seemed to feel danger and actually flew directly into the air. Juntamiao doesn't care about martial ethics. Li Hanfeng's movements stopped, but the ants did not stop. Under the command of the leader, they all attacked Li Hanfeng at high speed. The sound of crawling on the ground and the sound of flapping wings could be heard endlessly, and they were surrounded by a dense crowd. Fortunately, Li Hanfeng was not a patient with trypophobia, otherwise he might have fallen to the ground on the spot. Li Hanfeng's breathing rhythm immediately changed, and his whole body was wrapped in golden thunder light. Breath of thunder 4 types far thunder. In an instant, streaks of golden lightning shot out in all directions. Many bloodthirsty ants that were close were killed on the spot, and more were blown away directly, leaving their bodies numb and unable to move. At this time, the bloodthirsty ants in the air also pounced towards Li Hanfengpu, their iron-like mouthparts opening and closing, extremely penetrating. Li Hanfeng was already on guard. He jumped back and dodged the attack, and his breathing rhythm changed again. Breath of thunder 3 types gathering mosquitoes into thunder. Golden thunder and lightning ripples gathered in an instant, and when the Tang Dao was waved in his hand, it rippled in all directions along with a mosquito-like buzzing sound. Puff, puff, puff. In an instant, several bloodthirsty ants that were attacking were cut off in half, and a small vacuum appeared around them. Li Hanfeng seized the opportunity, sheathed his sword, and began to accumulate strength. He leaned forward, lowered his center of gravity, and kept scanning the bloodthirsty ants in the air with his scarlet eyes, and finally his eyes rested on the leader of the bloodthirsty ants. Since it doesn't work once, then. Breath of thunder, type of 1, flash of thunder, 8th company. Boom! The golden thunder on Li Hanfeng's body instantly became violent, and the ground began to shatter inch by inch under the terrifying pressure. His figure disappeared instantly as the gravel splashed everywhere. Swish, swish, swish. I saw a golden thunder light flashing in the air. Every time it flashed, it landed on a bloodthirsty ant accurately. The speed was so fast that the shape of the lightning was invisible. In just one breath, the bloodthirsty ant leader felt a touch of gold light up in his peripheral vision, and his wings flapped wildly, trying to react. But the next moment the golden light had flashed away, and then it felt its sight began to fall rapidly. Because the speed was too fast, its body had not yet reacted, and it was still flapping its wings and stopped in the air. The bodies are separated. Snap! The headless corpse in midair lost its final strength and fell to the ground helplessly from the air. Aha! Li Hanfeng's figure appeared not far away. As soon as he stabilized his figure, he quickly turned his head and stared at every bloodthirsty ant in the field with a pair of scarlet Sharingan eyes. The bloodthirsty ants seemed to be a little sluggish at the moment because of the death of their leader. They made no next move for a while, and the two sides formed a silent confrontation. But Li Hanfeng didn't notice that not far behind him, a pair of tentacles on the triangular head of the bloodthirsty ant leader was twitching regularly. The two sides faced off for less than 15 seconds, that is, the moment the bloodthirsty ant leader's tentacles completely stopped moving, the bloodthirsty ant colony immediately began to riot. In an instant, all directions in the sky and below were blocked by the attacking figures of the bloodthirsty ant swarm, which surrounded Li Hanfeng at extremely fast speeds. Li Hanfeng's scarlet pupils were unmoved, and he watched the other party attacking him with an indifferent expression. Under the gaze of his Sharingan, this group of bloodthirsty ants without the command of their leader completely lost their tight cooperation one after another. This level of attack could not pose a threat to him at all. He inserted the Tang Dao into the ground, his slender fingers danced rapidly, his chest bulged, and his eyes looked into the air. Art fire escape ho fireball. Boom! A huge fireball roared out from Li Hanfeng's mouth, instantly drowning the bloodthirsty ants that were attacking in midair. The first-level bloodthirsty ants simply could not withstand such high temperatures. In an instant, a dozen bloodthirsty ants under the coverage of the fireball were reduced to ashes. At the moment when Hao's fireball was released, Li Hanfeng didn't even look at the result. Instead, he quickly pulled out the tang knife on the ground and made a hissing sound as white mist surged around his mouth. Breath of thunder 3 types gathering mosquitoes into thunder. Golden thunder gathered, and when the tang sword was swung, the golden sword light spread out in all directions like ripples, making a buzzing sound like mosquitoes. Puff puff puff. Wherever the golden ripples passed, the bodies of the bloodthirsty ants were broken into two sections, and a vacuum was cleared around Li Hanfeng in an instant. His scarlet pupils condensed slightly, and Li Hanfeng stepped forward. As the ground shattered, his figure was already rushing toward the weakest point of the encirclement ahead. Swish, swish, swish. The Sharingan rotated crazily, and veins popped up in his arms. Every time the Tang sword in his hand was swung, a bloodthirsty ant the size of a washbasin would be cut off, and transparent liquid would splash everywhere. Li Hanfeng had never learned any advanced body skills. He only relied on the dynamic vision and combat consciousness of the Sharingan to move around among the bloodthirsty ants, and he could always avoid the attacks before they landed on him. Just like that, Li Hanfeng broke out of the encirclement right in front of the ant colony like an overwhelming force. This was an absolute crushing in terms of strength, which could not be compensated by a small amount of numbers. The moment he broke out of the encirclement, Li Hanfeng suddenly inserted the Tang Dao into the ground again, used the force to turn around suddenly, and formed seals with his hands again. Art Fire Escape Ho Fireball. Boom. The powerful fireball may only be able to contain enemies of the same level, but against these first-level bloodthirsty ant colonies, the effect is surprisingly good. In an instant, a dozen more bloodthirsty ants were reduced to ashes. Pulling out the Tang Dao, Li Hanfeng looked at the ants that were once again surrounding him with cold eyes. Li Hanfeng was tired of their tireless and life-or-death siege. If there wasn't a fly watching, he really didn't want to get entangled with these bugs anymore. Li Hanfeng took a deep breath, his breathing rhythm changed, the veins on his arms bulged, and his body turned into golden lightning and rushed directly into the ant colony. Breath of Thunder 2 type Rice Soul. Breath of Thunder 4 types Far Thunder. Breath of Thunder 3 types Gathering Mosquitoes into Thunder. Li Hanfeng alternately used various sword types in the ant colony, but since there is currently no super wide AoE damage skill, there is no way to kill hundreds of bloodthirsty ants in a short time. The current scene appears to be a one-sided and suppressive massacre in a short period of time, but Li Hanfeng himself knows one thing very well, that is, it is basically impossible for him to really kill all the bloodthirsty ants without exposing his shadow clone. The Breath of Thunder puts a heavy burden on the body. He has used the sword form alternately many times in succession. His arms and legs already feel a little sore, and most of his spiritual energy has been consumed. In this dangerous place, he couldn't really fight to the end, and he had to leave enough ability to protect himself. So he was actually considering retreating. Anyway, it was fun to kill now, and he had gained a lot of points and kill points. He couldn't kill all of them this time, so he could just come back and kill again when he was almost recovered. Thinking like this, Li Hanfeng immediately wanted to retreat, but he suddenly felt something was wrong. Under his slaughter, the number of ant colonies has been decreasing, but he found that the vibrations on the ground were getting stronger and stronger. Li Hanfeng's eyes condensed, and his figure once again transformed into a golden lightning and rushed out of the encirclement. Then he did not rush to attack anymore. His scarlet Sharingan kept scanning the surroundings while feeling the increasingly strong vibrations on the ground. Suddenly, his scarlet pupils shrank. He found a large black shadow in the distance coming towards him. Judging from the flow of spiritual energy, it was undoubtedly bloodthirsty ants, a large group of bloodthirsty ants. There was a large area of darkness, and the ground shook violently wherever it passed. Even some nearby buildings that were dilapidated like skeletons began to shake violently, as if they would collapse at any time. Damn it, can you send a signal for help from such a distance? Li Hanfeng cursed lowly, and suddenly turned his head and looked at the entrance of the cave in the nearby ruined building. I saw the entrance of the cave shaking violently, and then bloodthirsty ants began to emerge one after another from inside. As soon as these bloodthirsty ants came out, they began to disperse quickly, and then surrounded Li Hanfeng. At first glance, you can tell that there is a leader directing their actions. Seeing this situation, Li Hanfeng couldn't care less about reservations and immediately formed seals with his hands. Shadow Clone Technique. Bang! A burst of white smoke rose, and there was another Li Hanfeng on the spot. The main body and the clone looked at each other and immediately began to rush towards the hole in the broken building. It would take some time for the large ant colony in the distance to catch up. Now let's block this hole first. The main body and the clone worked together and instantly reached the front of the cave. Li Hanfeng held the Tang Dao and stood guard while the clone began to form seals with both hands quickly. Art Fire Escape Ho Fireball. Boom. The Hao fireball let out a roar and poured directly into the hole. Under the terrifying impact, the hole was stretched a bit, and the edges began to shatter inch by inch. The clone mobilized all the spiritual energy in his body to maintain the output of the powerful fireball, while Li Hanfeng stayed nearby to kill every bloodthirsty ant that rushed over, preventing them from getting even half a step closer to the clone. Both the kill value and the points are indispensable this time, right? Swish, swish, swish. The tang sword in Li Hanfeng's hand kept waving, and while slashing through the air, it also brought up streams of white liquid. His scarlet Sharingan would look into the distance from time to time, estimating the time in his mind. When he felt the vibrations on the ground getting stronger and stronger, and even the pebbles on the ground began to bounce up, he rushed out directly. Breath of Thunder, Type of 1, 8th Company. Swish swish swish. The golden thunder light in the field kept flashing. Every time it flashed away from the black shadow, the bloodthirsty ants on the path of the lightning light were broken into two sections. In just one breath, Li Hanfeng's figure had already broken out of the encirclement, and then disappeared into the remains of the ruins. The clone on the spot was still spitting fire, but was attacked by a bloodthirsty ant after a while, and then turned into white mist and dissipated in place with a bang. This scene once again shocked everyone in the conference room outside the secret realm and stunned them. At this time, the conference room fell into silence again. Everyone no longer knew how to describe their mood at this moment. They just looked at the people in the front in unison. And Li Xingwu has been silent for a few days. He has a new ability. What kind of ability is this? Strengthening, thunder, fire, stand-in, and now this one, is it a clone? And there are several talent moves. What kind of freak is this? How long did it take for you to wake up? How can you master so many talented moves? Where did so many abilities come from? Is it the second or third awakening? At this moment, their hearts were filled with questions, and they had no way of knowing the answer. Instead, their inner doubts outweighed their shock. Li Hanfeng has already shown a variety of abilities. Now it doesn't seem difficult to accept another one. On the contrary, it makes them uncomfortable that their doubts cannot be answered. They turned to look at Ozan and found that the other party had been staring at the light screen and had no intention of paying any attention to them. They could only sigh in their hearts and suppress their doubts for the time being until Li Hanfeng came out. Of course, the reason why they didn't ask Ozan was because they were sure that the other party wouldn't know more than they did, so they started joking. How could the other party know the details of Li Hanfeng when he couldn't go back to school several times a year? The scene was a little quiet for a while. No one said anything, but they all moved their eyes to the light screen and continued to watch. At this time, Li Hanfeng was on the top floor of a skeleton-like building. He calculated the time correctly and quickly left the battlefield before the large group of bloodthirsty ants approached, leaving his clone to attract firepower. The main body successfully escaped from the battle without being chased. After a long distance, he found a dilapidated high-rise building and climbed to the top to start recovering. Standing high and seeing far, being at a high place can broaden his sight. Even if there is any change, he can react immediately without being caught off guard. At this time, Li Hanfeng's spiritual energy gathered all over his body. Through the operation of the breathing method, the spiritual energy was inhaled into his mouth and nose, and was then used as sea water to fill the air sea in his dantian. More than 2 hours later, Li Hanfeng felt that his spiritual energy had almost recovered, and then he opened his eyes and stood up. After looking around on the tall building to make sure everything was normal, he began to check the harvest. He lifted the watch strap on his left hand and glanced at it. Name: Li Hanfeng. Score: 2540. Seeing this score, Li Hanfeng nodded. It seemed that the last fireball blocking the entrance of the hole really killed a lot of bloodthirsty ants. But I don't know what level this score is. I can find these swarms of bloodthirsty ants that are not difficult to kill. I guarantee that other people will encounter similar creatures. Without knowing other people, I can only try my best to improve my score. There is still one day tomorrow, and this score must at least double again, otherwise I feel it is not safe. Oh, it would be great if I could know other people's scores. Li Hanfeng's thoughts flashed. Then with a thought, the system panel appeared in front of him, and he first took a look at the kill value. Kill value: 2220. Seeing this value, Li Hanfeng's lazy eyes lit up slightly, and he had an idea in his mind. Then he opened the personal information panel. Personal panel. Race: human. Age: 17. Talents: Breath of Thunder, Magatama Sharingan. Level: Extraordinary Level 4. Skills: Breath of Thunder, Form 1, Thunderbolt Flash, Breath of Thunder, Form 2, Rice Soul, Breath of Thunder, Form 3, Gather Mosquitoes into Thunder, Breath of Thunder, Form 4, Far Thunder, Shadow Clone Technique, Fire Release How Fireball Technique, Substitute Technique. Mission: the top scorer in the martial arts exam. Li Hanfeng looked at the abilities and skills he now had and fell into deep thought. Currently, all the skills focus on single target damage. The mission reward is 10,000 kills. Do you want to add more methods now? After pondering for a long time, Li Hanfeng immediately made a decision. He had already thought about the rewards for the mission, and the current killings could be used to perfect his methods first. As soon as he thought of it, Li Hanfeng immediately opened the ability mall, selected Naruto, and found the currently unlocked abilities. Level B Psychic. Rashomon 1000 kill value. B level Ninjutsu. Fire Release, Fire Extinguishing 1000 kill value. Li Hanfeng didn't think much and took it directly. This way he had defensive ninjutsu and group injury ninjutsu. After doing this, Li Hanfeng moved his body and felt the state of his body at this moment. My arms and legs are still a little sore, and my body is still a little tired, but overall I'm fine. Then Li Hanfeng raised his head and glanced at the sky. It was already about 1 or 2 o'clock, and it would take more than 2 hours to return to the forest from here. Li Hanfeng silently estimated the time and considered whether to go back to the forest to find trouble with those bloodthirsty ants again. Or do you mean not to return to the forest and directly confront the bloodthirsty ant colony? Li Hanfeng thought for a while, and there was still time, so he should restore his body to its peak. He immediately sat cross-legged on the ground and began to use breathing techniques to exhale spiritual energy. Another hour soon passed. Li Hanfeng opened his eyes, clenched his fists, and then nodded slightly. Well, that's almost it. Sure enough, I still want to find trouble with those ants. Thinking of this, Li Hanfeng immediately stood up and walked out of the dilapidated building, and then headed directly towards the cave. 10 minutes later, Li Hanfeng arrived at the place where the previous battle took place. He glanced around and found that the bloodthirsty ant colony had receded, leaving only traces of the battle, and all the corpses had been dragged away. Without paying attention, he walked slowly to the entrance of the building, looked inside, and then began to form seals quickly. Art Fire Escape Ho Fireball. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe.